The average 53-year-old American man has $53,000 saved for retirement, not $870,000. That's the median. Half of men his age have less than that. And here's the part that makes this statistic genuinely disorienting. He probably earns more money today than he ever has in his life. He owns a home, he takes vacations, his kids go to decent schools. He has a title at work that sounds impressive when he says it at cocktail parties. He thinks he's fine. That is the trap. It's not being broke. It's looking fine while the hole quietly gets deeper every single month. There's a very specific kind of financial damage that happens to men in their 50s, and almost nobody sees it coming because it doesn't look like damage. It looks like achievement. It looks like the peak of your career. It looks like the reward for 25 years of doing what you were supposed to do. And underneath it, in a way that doesn't show up on any spreadsheet your advisor prints for you, the decade between 50 and 60 can become one of the most financially dangerous periods of an average man's life. Not because men in their 50s are reckless, because many of them are successful. And success has a specific shape that can quietly consume the retirement they assumed was waiting for them. The problem begins when your lifestyle reaches its highest level at exactly the moment your working years are becoming limited. For decades, a higher salary has solved problems. Now, suddenly, that same salary has to accomplish something different. It has to fund your current life while simultaneously building the money that will replace your paycheck. And those two goals can collide. A $200,000 salary sounds enormous until you realize that taxes, housing, transportation, education, insurance, travel, debt payments, family support, and everyday spending can absorb almost all of it. That's why the first question you should ask in your 50s isn't, how much do I make? It's, how much does my life require? Those are completely different numbers. Consider a 53-year-old executive earning $210,000. On paper, he's doing extremely well. But his mortgage costs $4,000 a month. His vehicles cost another $1,500. He spends heavily on travel. His children still require financial support. He has several insurance policies, memberships, subscriptions, and other recurring expenses. None of these decisions looks disastrous individually. That's exactly why they are dangerous. Financial problems rarely arrive as one enormous purchase. They usually arrive as dozens of reasonable decisions that become permanent. A larger house, a nicer vehicle, a more expensive neighborhood, a second property, private education, more frequent vacations, helping adult children with rent, then another car, then another subscription, then another loan. Eventually, the question isn't whether you can afford any single expense. The question is whether you can afford all of them at the same time and continue paying for them after your salary disappears. That is the first major financial trap of your 50s, building a lifestyle that requires your employment. If your job disappeared tomorrow, how long could your current lifestyle survive? Not your survival budget, your actual lifestyle. That is the number that matters. Because retirement is essentially the moment when employment stops subsidizing your lifestyle. And if your lifestyle has become too expensive, retirement becomes less of a financial milestone and more of a negotiation with reality. This is why reducing expenses in your 50s can be more powerful than people realize. Suppose you permanently eliminate $1,000 of monthly spending. That's $12,000 every year. If you're still working, some of that money can be invested. But there's another benefit. You have also reduced the amount of annual income your retirement portfolio needs to produce. That's a double advantage. You save more before retirement and require less after retirement. Now consider what happens when you make the opposite decision. You increase your lifestyle by $1,000 a month. The cost isn't just $12,000 this year. It's potentially thousands of dollars every year for the rest of your life. And if that extra spending replaces money that could have been invested, you lose the future growth of that money as well. This is where compound interest becomes almost unfair. At a hypothetical 7% annual return, investing $1,000 every month for 15 years produces roughly $316,000. So the decision to permanently spend that $1,000 isn't simply a decision to spend $12,000 this year. Over a long enough period, it can represent hundreds of thousands of dollars of future wealth. That's why your 50s require a different mindset. You aren't just deciding what you can buy. You're deciding what future freedom you're willing to exchange for it. And then there's the second problem. Many people approaching retirement look at their investment balance and assume the number tells the whole story. It doesn't. Imagine someone reaches 60 with $800,000 invested. That sounds substantial. But what happens if the stock market falls 30% shortly after retirement? Suddenly, that $800,000 becomes roughly $560,000. Now imagine that the retiree is withdrawing money at the same time. The situation becomes much more serious. During a market decline, the retiree isn't simply watching the portfolio fall. They're selling investments to pay for groceries, housing, healthcare, and everything else. Those shares are being removed from the portfolio while prices are depressed. When markets eventually recover, fewer shares remain to participate in the recovery. This is known as sequence of returns risk. The average return over a long period can look perfectly reasonable, while the timing of those returns creates a completely different retirement outcome. That's why a retirement plan cannot simply say, the market has historically returned around 7%. Historical averages don't arrive in a straight line. Markets rise. Markets fall. Sometimes they fall dramatically. And the closer you are to retirement, the less time you have to recover from a severe decline. This doesn't mean someone in their 50s should abandon stocks. It means they should understand the role of diversification, liquidity, withdrawal rates, and risk management. Your portfolio shouldn't only be designed for the best possible future. It should be designed to survive an unpleasant one. And there is another danger that becomes increasingly important as people approach retirement: taxes. A retirement account balance isn't necessarily the same thing as spendable wealth. If much of your money is sitting in traditional retirement accounts, future withdrawals may create taxable income. That matters because retirement can involve several income sources arriving at once: Social Security, pension income if you have one, withdrawals from retirement accounts, investment income, maybe part-time employment. The way those sources interact can affect your tax bill. This is why tax planning should begin before retirement, not after the paycheck stops. For some households, the years between leaving work and reaching later retirement ages can create opportunities for strategic withdrawals or Roth conversions. But these strategies depend heavily on individual circumstances. The important lesson is simple. Don't ask only how much money you have. Ask how much of it you can actually spend after taxes. And then, there's something most retirement calculators struggle to capture: life. At 50, you may still have children who need help. At the same time, your parents may be entering the stage of life where healthcare and long-term care become increasingly expensive. You can find yourself financially supporting 2 generations while simultaneously trying to fund your own retirement. This is one of the most dangerous periods because every responsibility sounds temporary. Just help with college. Just help with the house. Just cover mom's expenses for a while. Just help my son get established. The problem is that several temporary commitments can overlap for years, and your retirement savings don't get a temporary extension. If you're putting $2,000 a month towards someone else's financial needs while postponing your own retirement savings, the opportunity cost can be enormous. That doesn't mean you shouldn't help your family. It means you need boundaries, because there is a fundamental difference between helping someone and sacrificing your own long-term financial security. Your children have decades to build wealth. You have a much shorter window, and perhaps the most uncomfortable issue of all is divorce. A divorce later in life can be financially devastating because there may be decades of accumulated assets to divide. Retirement accounts, home equity, investments, businesses, other property. At 30, a person may have time to rebuild. At 55, rebuilding is possible, but the mathematics are much less forgiving. That is another reason why financial independence isn't simply about having a large portfolio. It's about having resilience. The more complicated your financial life becomes, the more fragile it can become. And this leads to one of the most overlooked problems of all: financial complexity. People often believe wealth requires complicated strategies, multiple accounts, constant trading, sophisticated investments, expensive advisors, complex insurance products. But complexity creates more opportunities for mistakes, fees, taxes, and misunderstandings. Sometimes the strongest financial plan is remarkably boring: low-cost diversified investments, automatic contributions, controlled spending, reasonable debt, adequate emergency reserves, tax planning, and a clear understanding of what you actually need. Boring is not the enemy. Unnecessary complexity is. Now let's bring all of this together. Imagine 2 people who are both 52 and both earn $180,000. Person A spends almost everything. His house is expensive. His vehicles are expensive. He travels frequently. He supports his children financially and has little left after paying his regular obligations. Person B earns the same salary, but has deliberately created a lower-cost lifestyle. He still owns a comfortable home. He still travels. He still enjoys life. But he has avoided turning every raise into another permanent expense. Now suppose person B invests $3,000 every month for the next 13 years at a hypothetical 7% annual return. He could accumulate roughly $770,000 from those contributions and investment growth alone. Person A may earn exactly the same salary, but reach retirement with a dramatically different balance. Same income, same country, same decade, different financial architecture. That's the part people miss. Retirement wealth isn't determined only by what you earn. It's determined by the distance between what you earn and what your lifestyle consumes. That distance is your financial margin. And margin creates freedom. So if you're in your 50s, start with a simple exercise. Open your bank statements. Look at the last 12 months. Calculate what your life actually costs. Not the number you think it costs. The real number. Then separate your spending into 3 categories. Things you need, things that genuinely improve your life, and things you're paying for because you've become accustomed to them. That third category deserves serious attention, because the easiest expenses to eliminate are often the ones you don't even value anymore. Then examine your debts. Which payments will still exist when you retire? Which ones can be eliminated before then? Then examine your investments. What are you paying in fund expenses and advisory fees? What level of risk are you taking? How would your portfolio behave if the market dropped sharply during your first years of retirement? Finally, calculate your retirement income gap. How much will you actually need? How much might Social Security provide? How much can your portfolio reasonably contribute? And what happens if you live longer than expected? These questions may feel uncomfortable. That's good. A financial plan is supposed to reveal uncomfortable possibilities while you still have time to change them. The biggest mistake you can make in your 50s is assuming that because you survived the financial challenges of your 20s, 30s, and 40s, the same approach will automatically carry you through retirement. It won't. The rules change. Your earning years are becoming fewer. Your ability to recover from major mistakes is shrinking. And your investments are moving from being a wealth-building engine toward becoming a source of income. But there is also good news. 50 is not too late. 55 is not too late. Even 60 isn't automatically too late. You still have one of the most valuable financial resources available: the ability to make decisions today that change the mathematics of tomorrow. You can lower your fixed expenses. You can increase your savings rate. You can eliminate expensive debt. You can reconsider a house, vehicle, membership, or other commitment that no longer serves you. You can review your investment costs. You can coordinate your tax strategy. You can delay retirement if necessary. And you can stop trying to look financially successful and start becoming financially independent. Because those are not the same thing. A person can drive an expensive car and have almost no financial freedom. Another person can drive an ordinary car and quietly own enough assets to control the next 20 years of their life. One is impressive. The other is powerful. The goal of your 50s shouldn't be to prove that you made it. It should be to make sure you don't have to keep working simply to maintain the life you've built. That's the real retirement milestone, not a certain account balance, not a particular house, not a luxury lifestyle. Freedom. And the decisions you make during this decade can determine how much of it you have.